Peace, and welcome to the Tailored Healing Collective podcast. This is a space where we discuss everything sacred medicine, motherhood, healing practices across the globe, and transformation above all. It is my hope you take each story shared here and find empowerment in your own life, for it is here that we educate the mind to liberate the soul. I'm your host, Taylor. Today on this episode of the Tailored Healing Collective podcast, I have with me Bob Peck. Now, I came across Bob on TikTok and I find a lot of hidden gems there all of the time. So it was really cool to start to connect with people who have the same kind of similar view on what we're all going through in the spiritual experience. So I figured he would be a great person to give perspective. Last season we spent a lot of time talking about psychedelics and plant medicine and connecting to God consciousness, but there's so many other ways. So I'm gonna let Bob introduce himself a little bit and tell us about what he does.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. You're right about TikTok. It's been really beautiful to connect with a lot of like minds. There's something about that algo, right? It's been really cool to connect with people like literally interested in spiritual awakening, kind of deconstruction from Christianity, Zen Buddhism, shamanic traditions, Hindu philosophy. It's like you don't necessarily run into those people on the sidewalk. We're out here, but
Right.
it's a lot easier to find community, I think, online, and so it's been great. But yeah, no, my name's Bob Peck, like you said, and I put out a book last year called "Original Sin is a Lie," and happy to kind of go into more detail there. But ultimately, the idea is it's kind of an intro to world mystic philosophy, right? Which is kind of the esoteric wisdom traditions, across the globe all have this similarity. There's this kind of, it's called the perennial philosophy. That's kind of the connective spiritual kind of spiritual ideas that are very similar across traditions. And that's always captivated me since I was kind of a teenager reading Thich Nhat Hanh, Living Buddha, Living Christ, and Yogananda not long after that. So grateful for the Eastern Masters, big time in my journey. But yeah, no, I'm happy to kind of go wherever you'd like to in terms of covering. I do write about psychedelics, and happy to talk about that as well, and just kind of breaking the veil.
Sure. There's so many fun topics we're gonna get into today. But one, I'd like to kind of start off with your story. So I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, you were a Latter-day Saint Christian, and then was that correct? Is that wrong?
No, it wasn't.
Oh,
No, that's okay.
oh, go ahead. Well, tell me a little bit about your spiritual background and kind of how you wandered off into this part of spirituality.
Yeah, no, I admittedly I do kind of play up the ex-Christian vibe. But I really grew up Easter Christmas Christian, EC Christian, as we're called. And I actually, happy to set the record straight, I actually kind of enjoyed going to church because we went twice a year, and it was like the whole family dresses up, and we sing some songs, and it was like at a humble but pretty old church in East Texas. The pastor was very charismatic, and he was a very sincere guy. So I really enjoyed kind of a few of those years going twice a year. And then it was really around when I would sleep over and have to at a friend's house on Saturday night, and then have to go to my friend's church in the morning, and Calgary Baptist. And that was kind of my earliest inclinations of not really starting to resonate with what was coming through. And I write about it in the book, but basically it was at one of those kind of one of my friends like vacation Bible school, like kind of things, as a little kid. And this woman came up to me and says, do you want to go to heaven? And I'm 8 years old, 9 years old. And it's like, totally want to go there from what I understand. And she goes, well, all you have to do is say Jesus is Lord, and then you're good to go. And that was just very it's felt like there was more to it than that.
Yeah.
Just even as a little kid, and my dad was kind of questioning. His journey went from hardcore Catholic to hardcore atheist to spiritualist. And so he was kind of mid 90s. So he helped point me kind of in the right direction as well, in terms of, kind of spiritual, but not religious, and like exploring that further. But yeah, didn't grow up, super fundamentalist kind of Christian anything, but appreciated the beauty of aspects of it, and kind of had some personal difficulties very early on with some of the silliness.
Yeah, that's a lot to take on as a child, I think, especially when we're ingrained with these ideas from the very beginning. I think maybe when you're around other church kids or other people in church, it might be hard to question those thoughts initially, but then you become an adult and you grow up and things change a little bit. So tell us about your book and what brought you to the point where you decided to write it. I have been listening to it for days now on Spotify, and guys, it's a book you need to listen to. It goes very into depth and detail, and I appreciate every word, not only the time you spent writing it, but recording it and hearing yourself say all these things out loud.
Totally. Thanks so much, Taylor. I'm glad you're enjoying it, and it's resonating. Yeah. Well, also my dad is a novelist, and so I've always kind of known, like, he's a great writer. He's very unknown, but he has a real gift. And so I started writing. My background's in film. Documentary film is what I went to school for. So I wound up doing film and religion, and then started writing nonfiction, kind of little pieces. It kind of started on Facebook, actually, like on just like my personal Facebook on Easter, like, this is how Yogananda reads Easter, and that, and it started to get, some engagement and comments, and Christians saying, oh, that's interesting and unfamiliar, and or whatever, just getting engagement on a personal Facebook, long time ago. And then started to post on Medium about 2019. I started posting. I looked up, and I had about 40,000 words of like different kind of nonfiction, kind of spiritual philosophy takes. And again, comparative religion, 2 degrees at UT, film and religion. So 2 degrees where you can't make money. But I but I love them. But no, but so yeah, so religious, student of religious scholarship background, and then yeah, just kind of continued studies after that, and read Yogananda, and really fell in love with Ram Dass about probably 12, 15 years ago. Listened to pretty much everything he ever said, which highly recommend. Byron Katie is a big one for me. Sri Ramana Maharshi, the Advaitins. And so I just kind of started writing about, really the spiritual buffet line, if you will. That was one of the kind of early subtitles for the book. And then, yeah, I looked up, like I said, I had about 40,000, 50,000 words, and a nonfiction book is about 70. I think mine's about 85. And I just said, I need to zero in a kind of pandemic era. I said, man, this is a kind of a good opportunity to, zero in on, this is a piece. There's something here that is cohesive. And it took time. It did take about 18 months probably to kind of structure it, because it's a pretty broad spectrum of a book.
Yeah.
Like I said, we go Bible scholarship to Buddhism to Hindu philosophy to psychedelics to kind of the illusion. So it goes all over. And I think, one of the big realizations for me in the creative process was struggling with the order and struggling with the sequence and kind of how do I introduce all these things. And it hit me, at some point in that process to say, oh, the order is my order. The order
Mm.
of the book is how I is the sequence in which I came to understand these ideas. And so that's really how it's structured. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun kind of getting it out there and getting feedback from people.
From where I've gone so far, I definitely feel like for you through the spiritual journey, it's also very aligned with the hero's journey, getting that call and discovering what it is that you're either looking for, you've been missing in some way, or what you want to connect with. So I really love that. What are some of the most challenging spiritual questions that you've had along your journey?
Oh, that's a cool question. Yeah, and I love Hero's Journey ref. I love Joseph Campbell. He's great. Difficult questions for me. You know, I feel like um the problem of evil, is a pretty tough one, and that's something that um isn't is tough to answer in TikTok comments. But that one is something that I feel like kind of after being immersed in spiritual philosophy and kind of mystic philosophy uh, for enough time now, it starts to make more sense around kind of the nature of suffering on this plane and really kind of undoing it. I mean, the Buddha says that everything in form is suffering or dissatisfaction in some way, and his entire you know framework for teaching is about removing suffering. Jesus has a lot of interesting things to say, but I think a couple things that he says, you know, modern Christians still have issues with, which is turn the other cheek, resist not evil. He says very bluntly, and so I that one has been an interesting one because as soon as you start to say things like turn the other cheek, um, most human beings on this earth are not interested in doing that. And so working kind of with the problem of evil and really trying to see through, ultimately, Taylor, I think the mystic outlook, and when I say mystic, I just mean kind of internal spiritual, kind of esoteric, the internal, not the exoteric, the external. The internal piece is all about kind of seeing through the physical world. We're very, you've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye. It's very tit for tat out here in the physical world. You did this to me, and therefore I'm going to do this to you. And like, that is samsara. That is what keeps us caught. That's what keeps us stuck, is this reactive. What we do is we make it real essentially by reacting to it. And I think it's, yeah, it's soon as a philosopher, as soon as you start to talk about things like that in that way, it was like, oh well, so then you just let evil people be evil, and didn't say that. But there does seem to be a really beautiful way. Really what you're trying to do is transcend the whole game. You're not trying to be caught in it. And I don't think that means that we shouldn't have you know guardians of society and so on in terms of their evildoers, and that's obviously true. But compassion, what people who are acting evilly are suffering themselves. They're just projecting their own um, they're projecting their own internal struggles and traumas that they're carrying. And so, Buddha says hatred can never cease by hatred. Hatred can only cease by love. So that one's a tough one to work with, but it's so important.
Yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about what you were saying earlier about Ram Dass, I think that was one of the first people that I listened to that when I connected with psychedelics, it allowed me to kind of break down all these structures that religion puts in place and all of these walls. So, like you said, it's very reactive in this society. Even though we want to hear turn the other cheek, we have to say, yeah, but so and so did this to me or they did that. And it's so hard for people to let go of that, especially in the chaos that we live in today. But I still see beauty in all of that. So the fact that you were able to take all of these concepts that are really so challenging for people to understand and break down and then find a way to show truth in that, and I love the title Original Sin is a Lie, was it's very interesting. And I think with a lot of people coming into learning about different kinds of spirituality right now, the one thing that's going to keep them from remaining trapped is to understand compassion and love. And I know that's really, really hard because we think that just because people participate in, certain plant medicines that they learn that, but some people
Mm.
don't. So could you share with us a little bit about your own psychedelic experiences?
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And it's there's a lot of kind of nuance to the psychedelic conversation for me because I see a ton of value in it. And I'm a fan, frankly. It's been transformative for me. But also at the same time, Ram Dass is um a central part of his story is that when you get high, you always have to get low again. When you go up, you come down. And the point isn't to get high, it's to get free, And so they have value. They absolutely have value because they can give you a glimpse kind of through the veil, so to speak. They can let you see beyond the tightness or kind of the barriers really that we put up. What psychedelics do is they just melt away the barriers, right? Kind of emotionally, psychodynamically, conceptually. And so that is definitely valuable, but I don't think, they're not a requirement for enlightenment or awakening. Right. I do think they're probably better than, a percentage of things that are coming from the Walgreens drive-through. But no judgment also because prescription pharmaceuticals definitely do work and can help people. But there is an epidemic in America, right? There's an opioid epidemic that's terrorized, primarily lower socioeconomic segments of society, and that's a kind of another conversation, but it's relevant in that sacred plant medicine could be kind of a replacement in a healthy way when done correctly. And I think there's a lot of kind of clinical therapy applications of psychedelics that are coming in hot, which is super exciting. But again, let me just say all of this to say that I don't think it's essential, required, or um, you know, very mild to moderate occasional uses what does the trick,
That
at
was
least
one
for
of
me.
I'm the same way. And that was one of the first things I learned before I had ever tried anything at all. It seemed that enlightenment came from finding yourself first. And that I think I can't even remember the exact quote, but I did hear a talk by Ram Dass once, and he was quoting someone else saying that, taking psychedelics was like visiting God for a few minutes and then it's over with. And
Right, right.
we kind of forget that and become separate from it. And that's where I've gone on my own journey where I think it's very helpful, especially for people who go through so much pain, but it's not, like you said, it's not a requirement. There's so many other ways to connect with God consciousness that don't require it. I think it's a great tool, but I don't think it's something that should be overused all of the time. And with, what's going on with the epidemic in America, I think it could get scary for some people, because they become reliant on it, and we forget, like, the closest you can get to nature is just going outside or going within. You don't have to always go take something in order to reach that. So thank you for sharing your take on that. I like that, and I think it'll
Sure.
definitely give people a different perspective.
Yeah, let me just say a couple more things. I really like what you said too. Terrence McKenna is a great philosopher of psychedelics for anyone listening. He has a lot of lectures on YouTube that are dazzling. Um, and also, um, yeah, what I was going to say with the Ram Dass Maharaji story, which I do actually write about in the book. And I'm, sourcing from Be Here Now and Miracle of Love, which are Ram Dass material. So feel free to go straight to the source. But basically, when he was fired um, from Harvard. I guess, should I kind of give some context on Ram Dass a little bit?
Sure.
Um, so basically, Ram Dass was a psychology professor at Harvard. His birth name is Richard Alpert. And so Dr. Alpert was a psychology professor, very distinguished university, very, kind of this up and coming professor, and talking about Freudian psychology, the latest stuff. This is in the 40s and 50s. And he realized he was so desperately unhappy. He was neurotically unsatisfied, and he thought that he had everything. He had a nice car and his apartment and a great job, a great career. He had a plane that he would fly across the country in, and he would still get in the bathtub and cry. And he just didn't know what the hell was going on. And there was this eccentric professor that moved into his hall, and his name was Professor Tim Leary. And most people are probably familiar with Tim Leary, but Tim kind of became one of the biggest figures in American psychedelic period of the 60s. But before that, basically Tim and Richard took a trip together. They ate, consumed mushrooms, psilocybin, I believe, and it changed everything for Richard Alpert, and he basically saw his body melt away, and he said, "Oh well, I can still be my personality." Then he saw his personality melt away. Then I can still be the professor, and he saw the professor melt away, and then his body, and he was just nothingness underneath it all, because the nothingness is the wholeness. And anyway, you'll have to read his accounts of it, but they started to study psychedelics in an academic setting, and it was going pretty well. And eventually it didn't. And they were both publicly fired and defrocked, and it was a very kind of ego death, if you will, and a humiliation kind of thing. And they kind of went their separate ways. Tim Leary went to go be kind of a LSD guru type guy in California, and actually the Beatles John Lennon wrote "Come Together," the famous rock song, about Tim Leary's gubernatorial campaign in California against Ronald Reagan. So that's a
Wow.
fun little pop culture fact. Yeah. "Come Together" was for Tim Leary. But Ram Dass, in the meantime, said, I'm going to just travel the world and try to figure out those, who knows about this stuff, because there has to be some holy men or some holy women or some monks or nuns somewhere, a guru or somebody that could tell me, what this is all about, erasing the body and the psychological dynamics. This is just, he has a funny joke where he's like, we thought we were the pioneers of consciousness. We're Harvard psychology professors doing psychedelics. No one has ever explored consciousness this deeply, so they thought, until they read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, through Aldous Huxley, and they found Eastern mysticism and realized that some of the mental maps from the East were 10, 20 times more sophisticated than they had ever realized. So he went that direction, and basically he had a miraculous meeting eventually with his guru, Maharaji named Kroli Baba. And at one point in that first visit, I think it was about an 8-month stay in northern India. It was like, I think it was in the first week actually that he was there. Maharaji said, "Where's the medicine?" And he was like, "What?" And he was like, "Give me the medicine." And his traveling companion said, "He probably means the LSD that you have. And isn't that what you're trying to figure out?" And so he says, "Give me this old Indian man, kind of miracle guru, takes 4 pills, which a pill was, I think, 300 micrograms, 310. So it was over 1,200 mgs. And so basically, a standard dose is around 400. I mean, you're really going to be rocking out. I mean, you're already feeling it at 100, 200. So the guru took about, over 1,200. And Ram Dass is going, "What's going to happen? Did I just kill this man? What?" But as a scientist, he was like, "This is going to be interesting." and nothing happened, famously, whatsoever. He was completely normal. And kind of in his conclusive point about the whole episode, essentially what he says is, when you're in Detroit, you don't have to take a bus to Detroit, right? The master was operating at a much higher level of consciousness, of energetic frequency, than we are. Yeah, but even you and I on psychedelics, we come up here, but we're still underneath someone on that level. And so I think it was just it's an important kind of footnote for me in the psychedelic spiritual study, because it's not the be all and all. I think it's a useful tool, and that's about it for me.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So, as an author, producer, writer, and filmmaker, what is it that you hope to impact the world with?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. The most amazing thing about putting this book out and connecting with people has been getting a couple of messages from people. I'm kind of getting more and more, which is crazy, but even about a month or two in, I was getting some private messages from people basically saying that the book was really helping them, undo a lot of fear, and trauma in some ways around their strict religious upbringing, and that they had kind of been grappling with either a difficult family relationship based on them having their own moral difficulties with it, or it's a common theme, I think, in America, but probably the world, about having some disagreement with your family or your kind of cultural religious framework, and then you kind of go off on your own and you're asking questions and things like that. And so to be able to kind of help point people, and really all I'm doing too, Taylor, is I'm not a guru. I'm I'm figuring it all out on my own too, but I'm happy to say that the book does point to great teachers and great masters of this stuff. My book is just a commercial for a lot higher beings than me. But it's a real honor that it seems like it has to point people in the right direction in terms of really shifting. I think the grand statement would be this: shifting the sentiment of fearful God or jealous God to a loving God, because that's the mystic kind of judo move. It's like God isn't mad at you. The creator is not angry at you. The creator isn't judging you. Those are egoic interpretations. The creator's love is so powerful and so infinite. It's inescapable. And there's not much else I care to focus on than reminding people about that.
Well, I think it goes without saying, but thank you for saying I'm not a guru, because I know a lot of people like they want to call other people gurus, but I think people who are always learning always still look at themselves as a student and never necessarily as a teacher, even if they are teaching. And down the line, you will still be someone's teacher at some point. You just may never see yourself that way. And I think that's a part of this whole consciousness that we're here to teach each other. And even the ones that we call gurus still don't look at themselves that way. They were just a part of the school that we're in Earth School.
Absolutely. Well, beautifully said. Yeah, I think we're all teaching and learning. You framed it exactly. And I think through teaching this stuff, I've learned so much. I've really zeroed in on a lot of the material from seeing it through the teaching lens. So it's been helpful in that way.
Well, your words and your work have really helped re-inspire what I've always thought, which is a lot of spiritual work is about releasing barriers, not holding up too many walls about, your idea of what reality is and society is. And then also being open to learning all of the time, no matter who it's from, no matter what the background is, to practice this one universal thing called love. So are there any final words you'd like to leave us with today?
How can I top that?
Great. I'm
No,
so
a
glad
pleasure to connect with you. Yeah.
I'm so glad you agreed to do it, because there are more people waking up like you, and I think it's important we listen to everyone. So I thank you for being here on the show today, and actually I hope that we can follow up and do a part 2, because I definitely want to go more in depth about your book soon.
That'd be great. Happy to come back.
All right. Well, thank you so much, you all. I am going to connect all of Bob's information in the show notes, including a link to his book. Hopefully you all go out and purchase it, listen to it on Spotify, wherever you can, to help you on your own path towards enlightenment and just to learn from someone else in this crazy place we call life. So thank you for joining me on the Tailored Healing Collective show. And until next time, let love lead the way. Peace.
Beautiful.
All right. From the old, I have a crown of success. I am sure of what is coming, and let the universe do the rest. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I manifest what I want again and again. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I manifest what I want again and again. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I manifest what I want again and again. Time is a dimension that we enter when we choose to align with self that's divine. It first exists inside of our minds. don't know how, I don't know when, but I manifest what I want again and again. I visualize my desires. I create with intention, a new dimension where reality is in my hands. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I manifest what I want again and again.